So, I need to talk about the Goldeneye releases for Nintendo Switch Online and Xbox Game Pass. Now, I know there's been plenty of videos on this site that are complaining about these ports, and honestly, I'm in the same boat. Regardless of if you enjoy these or not, they are objectively bad ports. I shouldn't even say ports. Both of these products are being emulated. Yes, both. Now, before I begin, please understand that I know that these versions are liked by many. Most people won't care for the flaws, they are just happy that they can play the game again. And that's okay. Please, don't let what I say dissuade you from having fun. This video is just here for me to complain and to show you why I am complaining. These ports just honestly make me mad. Goldeneye was the very first video game that I ever played. I have fond memories of me being around 3 years old, sitting on my dad's lap whilst he played the game. I then started playing it when I was a bit older, and I've been playing it ever since. It was a huge part of my childhood and still belongs in my life to this day. So basically what I'm trying to say is that I care a lot about this game. So when the achievements for the Xbox version were leaked mid-2022, I was excited. At first, I thought we'd be getting a finished version of the XBLA remaster that was meant to release in 2008, but it soon dawned on me that that wouldn't be the case. The first red flag was when it was revealed that all the icons for these achievements had the original graphics, not updated ones. Part of me thought that maybe I was overthinking it, but deep down I knew that they weren't working on the XBLA version. That's a shame, but since it's releasing on the Xbox series of consoles, as the Switch version hadn't been hinted at yet, I still had high hopes. Fast forward to the start of 2023 and these ports get announced, with the Xbox version being faithfully recreated and enhanced, with a stable frame rate, and with the Switch version also getting online multiplayer support. So safe to say, I was excited. It looked like GoldenEye was finally coming back, and people who didn't get the chance to play it and don't know how to properly emulate it on PC can finally play the game in a more modern fashion. So the games get released, and unfortunately the problems instantly arise. Both versions were made by different companies, Switch being in-house and Xbox being done by Code Mystics. Let's start with the Switch version. The controls are awful. They didn't update the game's controls, so you have to fiddle around with the Switch's Joy-Con configuration outside of the game to get some sort of modern twin-stick style aiming. But that's not all. They for some reason bumped up the sensitivity for aiming, so now it's just way too touchy to get precise headshots or just shots in general. The fog is also extremely heavy in some levels, with the first level dam being the one I immediately noticed. But apart from that, believe it or not, that's about the extent of the serious problems with the Switch version. There are minor graphical glitches here and there, with certain objects flickering or being too transparent, which in all honesty shouldn't be acceptable in the first place, but it's only minor things. And surprisingly, this version runs at a somewhat stable 30 FPS. The only other problem I can see is the level caverns. For some reason, this level's frame rate matches the frame rate in the N64 game. So in other words, it runs like shit. Why? Who knows? It just does. Well, actually, wait a minute, there is one more problem. The game's online mode. Since Switch's version is the only one with online, you have to settle with the Switch's horrible netcode and host side connection. This is fine if you're in the same country, but the minute you connect to someone just a little too far away from your region, the entire game slows to a crawl, sounds and all. And this occurs for everyone in the game, as the game is only as fast as the slowest person's connection. Is that fun? No, of course not. Is it acceptable? Also no. I guess it is a nice little gimmick, but I can't imagine people staying up for hours on end game after game with this type of framework. So that's the Switch version. The Xbox version, oh boy. Now, before I absolutely rip into this version, please let me reiterate that if you are enjoying it, good for you. Keep doing that. A casual player may not even notice what I'm about to discuss, but that isn't going to stop me from tearing this port a new asshole, trust me. In this state, this port, this emulated hack job, is just absolutely unacceptable. Also, with this list, it's not extensive. It's just the most egregious examples out there. Most of them are catalogued on Grassloo00's Twitter account, which is basically the #1 guy for anything GoldenEye related. Now let's start with the good. The controls are good. You can get twin stick controls working fine in-game, and it doesn't seem overly sensitive unlike the Switch port. It looks nice, it's up-resed, they advertise it as 4K, but I don't know. Everything else is much sharper, so you can see just how ugly the character models look. Also, the game is locked at a constant 30 FPS to lock in the enemy AI and the fire rate for weapons, as a frame rate higher than 30 FPS starts introducing glitches, but it's not stable. Alright, so now for the bad. This game has horrible frame pacing issues. Like, for some reason, the game just slows down every now and then. Best way to show this is by this video here. the slower slaps indicate slowdown. The problem is you can't account for these slowdowns as they are inconsistent. It might do it in one area, but the next time you replay that level, in that area, it will be perfectly fine. And then, in a different area will act up. It's strange and downright annoying. This is on Xbox Series S and X. These consoles are 26 years ahead in technology than the N64. The game should not be slowing down at all. Period. Like, it's already locked at 30 FPS due to the higher frame rates bugging out certain things, as I've already discussed. However, I will be talking about that a little bit later. So yes, the game looks nice, but the graphics of it haven't been touched at all. Nothing has been updated. This includes the graphical seams on large stretches of structures that allow you to see into the void. Polygons still wobble, best seen when you look at guns on the ground. These graphical quirks are nitpicky. Yes, I understand that. However, this version was advertised as faithfully recreated and enhanced. For one, no, it was not recreated. It was shoved onto a proprietary emulator to work with Xbox, so that first half is a lie. 2, the only enhancement we see is the unstable 30 FPS frame rate lock and the higher resolution. There are some other minor setbacks of this version, which I'll detail now. The music is quieter for whatever reason. The aim lock makes the sniper rifle zoom in and out when you walk forwards and backwards respectively. Really disorientating. Speed strafing doesn't work with the analog stick. You need to use the D-pad instead. And it's been reported that the lean you can do while aiming now no longer exists. Apart from those, you might think everything's good. Now I'm going to detail the biggest problem this game has, and it is something that I simply can't understand. Enemy collision is broken. Like, it flat out doesn't work. There are now new glitches in the game that were never present in the original or via PC emulation. Enemies can now sometimes phase into walls and shoot you. They can now defy the laws of physics, and they can now enter new dimensions and get stuck between the very fabrics of reality. I cannot stress this to you enough at how utterly shocked I am. Even Project 64, an emulator that has versions that are 22 years old, did not include glitches that are as game-breaking as this. This is a commercial product. It might be rare to happen admittedly, but that does not excuse it. What other glitches are we going to find if this has already reared its head? As a result of this, there are now more enemies in certain levels. How, you might ask? Well, long story short, and to the best of my knowledge, some enemies in the original game were accidentally placed in areas that would make them stuck in objects. So instead of that allowing that to happen, the game would just outright not spawn them in. But now, because the enemy collision somehow works differently, these enemies are present. That just goes to show that minor changes like this can have unintended consequences. It just amazes me how you can fuck up so bad on a re-release that a game's collision system just refuses to work. Now lastly, remember when I said that the game's frame rate needed to be locked at 30 FPS, otherwise it would affect enemy AI and fire rates for weapons? Well, technically that isn't true, at least not anymore. You see, on PC we've had this little emulator called 1964, which enhances both Goldeneye and Perfect Dark to both run at 60 FPS, and it also keeps the timings and fire rates intact. You can also use mouse and keyboard if you want. It's great, the game plays phenomenally well. So if fans who work on these games as a hobby can get it to work flawlessly, why is it such a problem for Xbox? Sadly, I'm pretty sure I already know the answer to that question. I honestly do not believe these ports were given the time or the budget to get anything more than what we got. These ports were already completed mid-2022 and were delayed due to the Russian-Ukraine conflict. So they've been sitting there for 6 to 7 months, and even with all that spare time, I don't believe either of the development teams were allowed to work on the game any further. And it's just such a shame too. This game has a legacy. Everyone knows Goldeneye, we've all heard of it, and people like me have a history with it. To see it get treated like a cash cow with 2 ports that just seem to have the bare minimum applied to make them playable is downright depressing. My final complaint is that you can't even legally own the game right now. There are no options to buy it. You either need the expansion pass for Nintendo Switch Online, the Xbox Game Pass, or a digital copy of Rare Replay. My only guess is that these releases were allowed to come out on the grounds that the game is just not sold again, and that can only be accessed via subscription services, so we can't own it. Don't be surprised if in 5 years these ports are gone. I count on it. So Goldeneye has finally been re-released in the modern age, and I should be happy. Instead, I see my favorite game getting the barest of bones treatment, rushed out the door to effectively say, here, we've finally ported Goldeneye, now leave us alone. The games are playable. It's still the same game. It has all the content, nothing was cut, 22 levels, 4 difficulties, 23 cheats to unlock, and a multiplayer mode that's still fun with friends for a round or 2. That much is true. But this release depresses me. We deserve better. The game deserves better.